Brady and Burkhardt have the Lions Commanders game.
Yeah.
The Raiders want to hire Ben Johnson, who is the Lions offensive coordinator. Tell me, where's the conflict of interest that I'm supposed to get all hot and bothered about?
Listen, I'm not saying for you to get. I saw your column.
I just have one question. What is the conflict of interest, and how will it affect the viewer? That's my question.
Again, don't paint me as Johnny Journalism here. Just let's have a conversation.
I used to love calling you Johnny Journalism in the SI days.
Quite fun.
Yeah.
Now I'm Johnny sleeping. So the conflict is acknowledged and exists. Like no one's. In some ways, it's not even a story because we know about it. Tom Brady is a minority owner of the Raiders, correct?
Right.
The NFL has told him that he has certain restrictions. He cannot be in production meetings. He has limited ability to criticize officials. He cannot talk about like other franchises in a certain way. That is the conflict. The conflict is that he is.
What's the conflict?
Well, Jimmy, he is a member of an organization.
But how does that affect his broadcast, and how does that affect the viewer?
Because in theory, those who are calling games are supposed to be neutral observers of the game, correct? Or no? Or do you not disagree? Or do you disagree with that fundamentally?
I don't find Tom Brady to be a neutral observer. Like when he's calling a Bucks game, you think he's a neutral observer?
I think the reality of all this
he's friends with all these guys.
Correct. I think the reality of this is a lot of the analysts are absolutely not neutral observers. I believe
of course not.
Play-by-play people are. Like to think you've had Joe Buck on a million times as I have. To think Joe Buck is rooting for the Ravens over like the Patriots is. But
my point is this: I don't think Tom Brady is going to be rooting for the Lions to beat the Commanders because he wants to hire Ben Johnson.
I agree, and here is what, in my opinion, Tom Brady owes the audience. If Ian Rappaport is correct in his reporting that Tom Brady is recruiting Ben Johnson, you owe it to the audience at the start of that broadcast between he and Burkhardt to come out and talk about that and say, hey, in my other role, I'm doing this. I think this guy would be a great coach. I want everyone listening to know that I think the world of him. So you put that out there. After that, fantastic, Tom. Now I can judge you based on how you talk about the Lions offense. If you don't bring that up, am I not as a viewer always thinking, what does Brady really think of this team or this offense as he's recruiting this dude? That's what I think you owe the audience, transparency.
I 100% agree with you. Okay. 100%. They need to at the top of that, not in the pregame show.
Don't let Michael Strahan and Jimmy Jones.
Right. At the top of that broadcast, Tom Brady needs to say, obviously I'm with the Raiders now. Yes. Ben Johnson's a hot candidate, whatever he has to say. I agree with you 100%. My point is Tom Brady's call of that game and the viewer experience listening to that game is not going to be affected in any way, shape, or form by Tom Brady trying to hire Ben Johnson.
It is if he doesn't acknowledge it to the audience, in my opinion. That's where the viewer is impacted. But do I think that Tom Brady somehow is going to crap on the other team? That
exactly.
Makes no sense.
Right, and here's the other thing. No matter who does a Lions game, whether it's Aikman or Collinsworth or Romo, they all bow down and genuflect to Ben Johnson. So for Tom to do it, it's not going to be you're not going to be able to tell. There's not going to be a play where Goff throws a pick and Tom goes, Ben Johnson dialed it up right. He just made a bad throw. That's not going to happen.
I agree with you. And the other thing, too, is I feel like I've moderated myself on this, So when I was much younger, I was a little more gung-ho about conflicts of interest. But you cover this stuff long enough, there's just conflicts of interest everywhere.
Right.
So the way I and I'm a big tennis fan. My God, that sport is ripe with conflict every day. What I think is a fair expectation, though, as someone who writes this stuff and then as an audience member, is just to be transparent about the conflict.
I agree.
To acknowledge it to the audience, and then after that, then you as an audience member, you make the decision based if you think this guy is on the up and up or not.
Yeah, and I think most people watching that game will know that Brady is trying to hire Ben Johnson. I mean,
which is why if you acknowledge it, you
I agree.
Out, right?
I agree 100%. Yeah, the conflicts that bother me are the ones we don't know about. Like when there's a broadcaster who has an agent who's the same agent as who is representing a coach in the NFL. That's the problem. Those are the problems.
All the time. I agree with you. Which is why I've sort of mitigated some of my thinking, is because it's everywhere. You can't sort of stop it. The reality is CAA has broadcasters as well as they represent, in another division, players and coaches. It's just those conflicts exist. What I think the only
The
thing
problem is
go ahead.
the problem I have is the continued use of people using the phrase conflict of interest. I think people just like to say that because they think it makes them look smart. What the issue is, which you hit on, is transparency, not conflict of interest.
Which again, to me, like I think the only thing you would owe the audience there is, let's say you share the same agency, right, and you're interviewing that person like that. Just say it, just like, hey, we both work for the same. We're both repped by the same agency.
Well, that'll never happen.
I know, but then at least as a consumer, I can then make the decision, like, how I process this. I imagine a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it is because they fear that once you make that acknowledgement, people are going to think you're on the take, right?
Right.
Or that it's an easy interview. Anyway, like I don't think we're so far apart on this one. There are a lot more hardcore people on this than me. I become very, I don't know if it's cynical or worn out by the sense that like I see this stuff everywhere, like in every sport, all over the place, and to like not think that it doesn't exist, you're fooling yourself. And even again, like a perfect example of this, like Teddy Bruschi, right on Countdown, very tight with the Patriots, right?
Right.
I think he might even be like an ambassador for that team. So inevitably, like he has a POV of the Patriots, like he's
not doing games, so it's a little different.
But he wants him to do well, so it clearly like sort of would impact his thinking. But people know that, like who watch that show, so the transparency already exists, and I think that's all you should ask for. To me,
I agree. I know what let's see if we'll still disagree on this.
But you were trying to like take some shots at the conflict people who like wave the.
Well, people like conflict of interest. What's the conflict?
Yeah, I'm more bothered by other conflicts of interest that actually can impact us, like in Washington D.C. and elsewhere.
I'll say it this way. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I feel. Tom Brady's performance on Sunday will not be affected one iota by the fact that he's trying to help hire Ben Johnson.
I agree. His performance will not be. But
so then who cares if there's a conflict of interest?
The audience should know it exists.
Transparency. Yes, I agree.